Hello and welcome back to the worst Warmachine channel on the internet. I'm Malorian, and it's time for another bonus Warmachine Weekly. Now, this bonus comes from one of our content overlords, Darrell Duncan. You know, they're on Patreon. The people on the top level get to just literally every month say, like, you will make a video on this. And so this is that video for Darrell for this month. Now, the topic that Darrell wanted me to talk about was about being tilted. So really talking about what it means to be tilted, and then how to handle it when you yourself are getting tilted, and as well, how to handle an opponent that's getting tilted. So let's start this off by that first definition. So being tilted in a game really means having your emotions take over. So really, it's really leaning to that negative side where maybe you had a bunch of bad luck or just something really triggered you and now you're just really upset and really angry. And it's more just something where it's like in that moment, in that time, things just kind of hit you just wrong and now your mind's thinking about that and you're all upset and you can't focus on the actual game. So this is what the definition is, and obviously you can tell that it's not a good thing for multiple reasons, right? If it's happening to you as the person playing, well, if you're all tilted, you're going to be making mistakes and things like that, and if it's your opponent, well, it's not going to be a very enjoyable game, if you even get to keep on playing the game. But let's break these up into those two different halves as the way we're going to be talking about this. So first thing, what happens if you notice this happening to yourself? And I mean, sometimes it's actually difficult to actually realize that you yourself are tilted, right? You might just be thinking to yourself like, oh man, that was such a garbage roll, you know, like if I just up here, all I need was a 5 on 2 dice. I just need to get a 5. I don't know what the odds are for that, but it's really easy. And if I would have gone this would have taken care of that heavy. And now that heavy's still there, that's going to be taking out this. This is ridiculous. I should be way ahead. If this was dead, now this, you could see where in your mind, you're thinking this logically, right? In your mind, you're thinking about all the bad things that have occurred and could be now happening, but now they're not because of this. And while your mind goes down this, well, that's really you being tilted. That's you slanting this way down, thinking about all these negative things and not focusing on the actual game. And so because of that, maybe it means that you're going to be missing real opportunities, right? That, okay, this one bad thing happened, but there's still all these other good things you could be doing, and now you might just miss it. Or as well, on top of that, while you're busy thinking about these things, tick, 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 that clock keeps on going. And even if you're able to, basically do no other actions, calm yourself, and then play, if you lose 10 minutes off your clock, 5 minutes even off your clock, now your odds of winning that game are starting to go way down just from a clock perspective. So the first main point there is to really be able to identify that you are tilted. And I think the biggest thing there is to be aware that tilting can happen and be honest with yourself that it can and very likely has happened to you in the past and will again in the future. So then once you have that understanding, when it actually starts coming up, you can realize, okay, I'm tilted. I am now focusing on things that are not very important. It's actually decreasing my ability to try and win this game. What do I do from here? And I think the best thing to do is find a way to reset. Now, just saying to yourself like, well, I'm tilted, I'm just going to stop being tilted. That'd be amazing if we were all robots and just could do that, but that's not typically how I see that happening. And one of the things I was told to do in actually the workplace whenever these things happen is find a way to reset. And this reset can be based on anything, but it's usually something that you do that you can then say mentally like, okay, now we're reset. And that might just be it right there. That deep breath I took, right? Maybe you can just say to yourself, okay, deep breath, reset, here we go. Other people I've seen what their reset is they realize they're tilted. They'll just say, I'll be right back. They'll walk to a wall, walk back, something like that, and be like, okay, let's do this, right? So whether it's something where you're there at the table and maybe it's something where it's like, you just slowly put away all your tokens and dice and then take it back out again and be like, okay, we are reset and ready to go. Whether you have to leave and get a drink, do whatever and then come back, something like that is what you need to just physically reset yourself. Maybe you just say, okay, just a second, I gotta go check this message. You go to off to the side, open up your phone, go and check your email. Oh, of course there's nothing there because there was nothing there. Okay, now walk back. You have now reset yourself. That's the biggest thing. And what's going to work for you? What's the right reset thing for you personally? I can't say that. You are your person, and it's going to be more so the habit that you make for yourself. This might be something where if you're planning for this happening in the future, maybe actually just sometimes when you see that, like, I'm fully ahead in this game, I am not tilted, but I want to start setting up this mantra, this kind of like tradition right now, so that when I am, this will be something that I do. So maybe you'll just say, like, you know what, my thing will be that walk away and come back. I'm just going to go and try and do that some games. Again, this is not something that maybe everyone needs to do, but if you realize in yourself that tilting is a real problem, this might be something that you want to start setting up as a routine to prepare for yourself when you do become tilted. Now, I think something else that can come from yourself being tilted, and it's not something you have time for during that game, but after the game, when you're like, man, like that game, I got tilted. It's something that happened in this game. Identify what the trigger was. Maybe the trigger was a bad roll, like I've been using for those examples. Other triggers for people getting tilted is just the fact that your opponent got really lucky. Sometimes it's just your opponent, right? This person, whenever I play against this person, I get tilted. Sometimes it's an army or a caster. Whenever I face Kruger 2, I just get tilted. It's just the way I go, right? So something like that. After the game, identify what that trigger actually was, and then spend some time actually thinking about why that triggered you. Like, obviously, if something like bad dice happened, it's because you had some bad dice. If it's something like, okay, I faced, Magnus 2, and I just hate Magnus 2. Okay, what is it about Magnus 2 that just really, really triggers you and makes you that tilted, right? Now, once you've gone and actually identified that, maybe try and think through that a little bit more. If it's bad dice, just be like, okay, well, like bad dice happen. I realize that whenever I roll 2 dice, I'm going to have this bell curve. And that means that even though that usually I'll be around a 6, 7, 8, sometimes I'm going to roll the double 1s. Sometimes I'm going to roll the double 6s. I might just need a 5 and I might have an X% chance of rolling it, but that also means I have an X % of failing it. And just kind of understanding that will maybe next time mean that you won't get as tilted by it. Maybe just not tilted at all. Same thing for that caster or that player or whatever it is. What is it about this that really bugs me? Well, I just know that, Kruger 2 just gets to move things around and do this feed and push stuff. Then I'm all slow and it's so hard to come back. Okay. You've identified the problem. You know why it is something that tilts you. What can you do to combat this? Maybe if I go into this with a plan where I know this is how my list is going to deal with Kruger 2, I'm not going to see Kruger 2 and think about all those awful things and get tilted. I'll see Kruger 2, pull out that mental file of how I'm going to be combating Kruger 2 and follow that instead. So I think that's also a very important part. So for yourself, the main things here are: be able to realize when you're tilted, have a plan to reset yourself in the moment, and then after, identify what actually got you tilted, and then think around that so that next time you see it, you'll have maybe a different plan for it, or at least a different approach. So that's what happens when you yourself are being tilted. Now, what about the other side? What about when you identify that your opponent is getting tilted? And I think that even for this, there might be 2 different ways to look at this, and I'm going to quickly talk about the one and then hop back over to the main way that I want to discuss this topic, because there is a competitive advantage to having your opponent be tilted, and then there's of course the fact that you want to have a fun game at the end of the day. So on one side, very quickly, you might be happy when your opponent is tilted. You'll look across the way and be like, yes, they're tilted. They're going to start using up clock. They're going to start making mistakes. Now this is going to really give me this competitive advantage in the game. As I keep on admitting it over and over, this literally used to be me. I used to actually do things on purpose to try and tilt my opponents, and it is just a bad way to play the game. If you constantly try and tilt those players, they're going to start hating the game. You're going to start losing people in the community, even just thinking about people around, right? If you're in this environment where you're supposed to be coming here and having a fun game, and there's all this tilting going on, you're like, wow, these people are overly aggressive and competitive. I don't think this is a type of thing I want to be a part of, right? So it's just bad for the community. It might be good if you're trying to win, right? If you're locked into Squid Games and you're only going to win like your life if you win this game, okay, maybe try and tilt them. But otherwise, this is probably not the way that you want to go. Okay, now hopping back over the more important spot. You are playing at somebody, likely it's somebody that you know and know well, and you can see that they're getting tilted. Now, what this really means for you for that game is that this game is going to fall apart enjoyment wise. So maybe it just might fall apart immediately, right? I've seen people get so tilted that they're just like, that's it. Nope, that's it. You win the game. Bye. I'm done with this whole thing. And so obviously that's it. Your game's over. And if this is the type of thing where you drove in for this one game, you have time for one game and that's it, that's really not worth it to you, right? And again, like I said, it's not worth it to you as well if they're going to get so tilted that maybe they don't come in next week, maybe they just leave the game, maybe people around you, they're not enjoying it, so they're like, do I really want to drive in so I can listen to those people fight again? You know, like that type of idea, it's better if you can kind of calm the situation. Now, my number one thing that I do when I see someone starting to go down that road, because you can start either seeing it in their face or you can see it in the way that they're talking, like, oh man, I should have done this. I'll just try and reassure them right away, right? So like, that, first of all, I might confirm what they're thinking. So like, that was some really bad dice, but at least you got that out of the way, right? So something like that where I'm not saying like, you're just being silly, everything's fine. No, I say like, you're right. You know, I brought in my Magnus too. It can be pretty crazy, but I think you know how things go. If you just keep things outside the feet, you'll be able to come back in and contest or threaten Magnus, something like that. Kind of showing that, okay, this part is bad, but this is how you can make the good from it, right? I'll offer that to try and just stop the swirl before they get down to that tilted little cycle there. Now, if I see that they are really flustered, I'll just pause the clock. You know, even in a tournament, the TO might tell you, you cannot pause your clock. It is not allowed. And, you know, I'll even do that in a tournament. I don't care if the TO comes over and says, you're disqualified. That's fine. I'm in the point of my life now where I'm not playing to win. I'm playing for the community. I'll just pause the clock and I'll say like, okay, deep breath. Everything's fine. You know, like, do you want to just take a quick little break to reset? Basically the things that I know that are the actual answers on the other side we talked about, I'll try and actually apply them now. I'll be like, hey, let's just pause the clock. We'll go grab a drink, come back, or hey, why don't you just pause the clock? You know, just take a little break, maybe go and if you're having a question about how to beat this thing, you know, just think about it for a couple of minutes and then we'll play the game again. Because again, that clock coming off of there really helps people. The idea that the clock is still going is actually a thing that might get people more tilted because they realize they're getting tilted, but then they see the clock and they think like, oh my God, now I'm going to be losing this clock time as I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm doing this. Now I'm going to be losing this clock and I'm going to be losing even more. And that's even gets part of the whole thing. So if you can just take that out of the way and actually offer them like, look, resetting can cost some time. I'm here for this one game. If you need to take a minute, 5 minutes to just go to the bathroom, come back type thing, and then we can finish off and have an enjoyable game, that's worth it for me, right? I don't care about those 5 minutes. I'm here for a good game. And even if it's in a tournament, right? Sometimes if I see that things being really strict, and sometimes my opponent don't even let me pause. They're like, whoa, you can't pause. Fine. It's on my clock. Go up. You know, like, let's go for a walk. We'll grab some water. We'll, you know, like just, let's go see if it's raining outside. Anything like that. And then we'll come back and keep on playing. And then I'll clock back over to you. That's totally fine with me. I haven't clocked in years. If I do clock, it'll be an experience and something to talk about. So that's what I do with that in that moment when I see things going even worse. Now, let's say it goes even too far. There's nothing I can do to stop this. I noticed them starting to be tilted. I tried, like I said, identifying that, saying, oh yeah, that was some bad dice. But I mean, like, It happens, right? There'll be extremes, but now the rest of them should be fine, even though that's kind of like a gambler's fallacy. If I see it getting even worse, I'll just try and pause and try and help them reset in whatever way I can. But if nothing else, if it's like that all didn't work and they're just now super tilted and maybe they fight their way through the game, or they say like, screw it, I just quit. What I'll usually do is I don't talk to them immediately. One of the things that you learn in like conflict management is that when people are heated, tilted, whatever you want to be calling it, they're not thinking clearly. And so at that time to try and talk to them like, oh, wow, like whatever, they're just like a cycle of anger in their mind, and there's no use having that conversation. What I'll do though is like the next day or something, I'll be like, hey bud, was everything okay? I mean, normally we have these great games, but I noticed that you were really upset. Is it something I did? And I mean, like, you don't want to be putting the blame on them, right? You don't want to be messaging them and saying like, hey, what's your problem? I saw you were pissed off yesterday. You know, like, did you lose your job? Is there something you did wrong? Maybe try and like take that pressure off and like, is there something I did? I just want to make sure that everything's good. I just want to make sure like you're okay and all that type of stuff. And then you might be able to have that conversation. And what's really happening there is that third step I was talking about before, where maybe you can find that root cause for what actually tilted them. And it might be obvious, right? It was that bad dice roll or something else, but maybe it's something like, oh, you know, I just, you know, when I came in, I saw that one person, and I know like every single time in a tournament, we're going to be matched up against each other, and I hated playing that person, and I started thinking so much about that I wasn't able to even focus on this game. Or maybe there's something else like, oh, you know what, things are just really rough at home, you know, my son's in a hospital, and I'm just, you know, that's great, talk about these things. You almost like take on the role of the therapist, and that's what you should be doing as a friend, right? We are in this community, and I keep on trying to stress that, you know, encourage each other, support each other. And so if people are being tilted for things that have nothing to do with the game, that's perfect. Hopefully you stop being an opponent and start being a friend to these people and chat to them about it and seeing, you know, maybe all they need is an ear. Just someone that they can vent to. And that's perfect. If that's what you can do, is just like, hey, what's wrong? Great. You know, you've done your job to try and help them vent. They're going to feel better. And then hopefully that means that for your community, next time you go play the game, okay, they vented. There still might be those things in the background, but now they'll feel better when they go in and play the game. Or if it's something that is game related, same thing that we said before, you've helped identify it. Maybe you're like, yeah, you know what? Magnus 2 is a really tough caster, you know, like let's actually talk about some tactics of how to beat it. Brian, why would you do that? You're the one playing Magnus 2. I don't care. We're here trying to play this game, and the better I make you play against Magnus 2, the better I'll get playing with Magnus 2. So it's all a win-win, right? So there you go. That's really tilting from what's definition, what to do if it's happening to you, what to do if it's happening to somebody else. I wish it wasn't really part of the game and something we never saw, but it's human nature and something that you're going to be seeing no matter really what game you go into, right? So I don't care what you're jumping into. If there's any sort of winning, losing, and luck involved, or basically just any game, there's going to be tilting situations. So there you go. Again, if you have any thoughts on this topic or anything like that, please post it down below. And otherwise, thanks again to Darrell Duncan for his support and this topic. And for everyone else, we'll catch you later. Bye.